now it's my great pleasure to introduce today's topic, the future of global real estate post-COVID. Very timely right now. And here to share his insights is Tim Bellman, Managing Director and Head of Global Research with Invesco Real Estate. Welcome, Tim. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Caroline.
It's great to have you here. So my first question for you really is, really broadly, what impact has the shutdown had on global real estate so far? It's an easy one, right?
Yeah, love to say none, but that obviously is not right. I mean, the way I think about it, I mean, the COVID-19 crisis is unprecedented, and the pandemic's led to a major disruption in the global economy. In most developed countries, it's triggered the worst peacetime recessions on record, and they're anything but typical recessions. They've not been triggered by any regular excesses that build up in an economy. They've been triggered by a deliberate cessation of economic activity, sometimes multiple times now, in order to inhibit the spread of the virus. So until the path forward on the pandemic becomes clearer, I think it's very challenging to predict the depth and duration of the slowdown or the shape of the recovery in real estate demand as economies restart. And I think there are likely to be differences as we look around the world. But that being said, the way I tend to think about it, or try and think about it, I view the implications for real estate as really thinking about the lockdown period and the re-emergence from it as like a chasm over which a fiscal and monetary policy bridge is being thrown, and very effectively by governments around the world. But for me as an investment strategist in real estate, it matters more what it's like on the other side of that chasm rather than the chasm. It's what the view is like on the other side. And one of the best references I'd come across to this, or ways of framing it, was a few months ago. The Economist newspaper ran an article that coined the phrase the 90% economy, an economy operating at 90% of the capacity pre-COVID levels. And that resonates with me. I think that feels as if that's the real estate market conditions we are likely to be sort of in for some time. Now, what's the impact on real estate? And I think the first point I would make is to think what it was like, what the conditions were before we had the COVID impact. And before we had COVID, real estate market conditions around the world were in pretty good shape, fundamentals-wise. Occupancy rates were high, demand was adequate to absorb new construction, supply volumes weren't that great. Retail sector was clearly an exception. That was definitely already a problem area.
Do you see a permanent change in the way workplaces are structured or how we use them? And what impact could that have on the office sector? What do you see? Is this the end of the workplace as we know it?
Well, if I had $1 for every time that question's been coming up recently, it would have helped enhance our investment performance. But look, the way I think about it is this: I look at the office buildings as probably the most flexible thing invented by humans for service sector workplaces. And I think a lot of the discussion about disruption to particularly office buildings in the midst of this pandemic is a little too focused on the short term rather than thinking a bit longer term about the consequences. We held a webinar for our clients on the future of office a month or so ago in July. We had McKinsey talk about the future of work and how different jobs were going to change and what the consequences of that were, and they had surveys they reported on trends in office demand. And the conclusion of the discussion really was that the outlook for aggregate office demand, would it rise or fall? Would it rise because of the need for more space each, or would it fall because of working from home? And guess what? The answer was that it came out as a wash. The aggregate office demand seems to be fairly finely balanced. Employees have a desire for greater flexibility in where they work, more at home than before, but not all the time. And employers appear to be able to accommodate that. And I think what that does is it shifts the utilization of office space. It doesn't change the overall amount needed, but it changes what is needed. And I think we'll see more and more spaces that are designed to engender collaboration, networking, the kind of cultural glue of an organization when people are present. And then recognizing that routine tasks and functions, a bit like this one, can be carried out at least as productively from a home office, as it were, hopefully at least as effectively as this one. But the aggregate demand for office space unlikely to change materially, given the need to accommodate all of those employees from time to time in the offices in the collaborative space. So we sort of see it sort of emerging in that way. And that was consistent with work that we've been doing for over a year, really. We were looking at how the role of offices were changing in portfolios. We did retail and industrial a few years ago, and last year we were looking at office space. And we just completed that when COVID came along and reinforced a lot of trends. I think, though, the most important significant insight that came out of that review was the bifurcation in office building performance. And what do I mean by that? Over the last decade, offices in innovation hubs and life science clusters, kind of dynamic parts, places where the dynamic parts of the economy were located, have really outperformed others. And you may say that's obvious, think about Silicon Valley, etc., but it's beyond that, it's globally. And so in the 30 top innovation hub markets worldwide have outperformed the other 50 global office markets by an average of 283 basis points every year since 2001. And since the global financial crisis, the outperformance has been 320 basis points a year. And if you, that's at a citywide level. If you then take it further and you look at sub-markets, the outperformance is even stronger. So I see no reason why that changes post-COVID. I think there is a dynamism behind those clusters and those economic activities that is pushing those locations and the buildings in those locations to outperform the others. And that means that it's in a much wider range of potential losers and a narrow range of winners. And I think as a result, tech and life science clusters do well. Prime locations in the heart of gateway markets, CBDs, may take a bit longer to come back, but do well eventually. The concern about mass transit is the issue for them. Prime locations in secondary cities come back a bit sooner because they typically are not so reliant on mass transit, for example.
So just on a final note, if you could give the plan sponsors on the call one or two key takeaways when it comes to their real estate portfolios from your experience, what would you say?
I think it's not that dissimilar to what I would say to Invesco real estate, what we're doing for the plan sponsors. But I guess 3 or 4 ideas spring to mind. I mean, the first would be remember why you have real estate in the portfolio. And the reason for saying that is different plan sponsors have it in the portfolio for different reasons. And they have it in the portfolio in different ways for different reasons. And remind yourself of why that was. Was it to diversify the portfolio against other asset classes? Was it to lower risk, or was it to enhance returns, inflation hedge, all those things? And then evaluate if you think it's still fit for purpose or if it's the best way to achieve that objective going forward. I've made the case, or continue to make the case, that I think most of the characteristics of real estate have not been affected by COVID and will reassert themselves in time. I think trends have been reinforced and accelerated more so than they have been shaken up. Second observation, for those who have managers, keep in close contact with those managers. Understand what the impact is on rent collections and on critically NOI going forward. And rent collections and NOI are not exactly the same thing, they're connected. Make sure that you're doing all you can and all that they are doing all they can do to partner with those tenants to secure the durable income stream. in a period of uncertainty, giving yourself as much certainty as you can about locking in tenants for a durable period is a good idea. Third thing will be to recognise that in an environment where probably investment returns in all asset classes are going to be lower in the period ahead, there's again, and it's been this for 10 years and we keep thinking it's going away, but there's again a considerable buffer between real estate yields or cap rates and government or corporate bond yields. And that's the kind of reference point that most investors look at for the returns from real estate. So even if NOI slips further, a bit further maybe, or real estate yields or cap rates move out a little bit, they are historically attractive relative to the traditional spreads. It's more than one standard deviation above the long-term average. So that gives you quite a buffer on real estate before values are significantly under threat. And that's particularly true in North America and parts of Asia Pacific. And that's one of the driving factors why at the moment our kind of global allocation committee is guiding investors to overweight Asia Pacific, overweight North America against Europe, in which values held up better, will continue to do so, but don't have perhaps the same bounce back potential as the other two regions. And then I guess the final thing is for those amongst the audience who think about listed or unlisted real estate, I'll go to the wall to argue that long term the returns are the same from the two types of ways of investing in the asset class. It's just the characteristics in the short term. But those characteristics in the short term in listed real estate, which is corrected more than general equities at the moment, and certainly but by much more than unlisted real estate at the moment, as a kind of a hybrid between real estate and equities. Historically it's been oversold in downturns and then bounced back. And I just wonder if, I'm not giving advice, but I do urge people to think about whether there may be an interesting opportunity to explore there about a recovery prospect that is actually marking something that's oversold back to a less oversold position. So I'll leave that thought at the end.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tim. This has been really insightful, and I want to thank you for joining us today. A couple of things before we sign off. We hope you can join us for a couple of upcoming Monday Minute live chats that are scheduled. One is on September 21st, again at noon Eastern Time, and that is on Asia's post-pandemic future with Kevin Long from GIC and Dare Dunn from Wellington Management. And the second one we have coming up is on September 28th at noon again on the future of sustainable investing with MFS Chief Investment Officer Ted Maloney. We hope you'll be able to join us again on your Monday. And I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. Thanks very much, and thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everyone.